So I've been driving around this 2018 Honda Clarity for the past few months now, and I do gotta say, it's a very interesting experience. What's up guys? Hope you're having a great day today. Today I'll be talking about what I love and hate about this car. You might recall that I did a similar video in the past, and if you haven't seen it, link in the description. But today we'll be talking about the Clarity, so let's get started. And just like that, we've made it to a random parking lot where I filmed the last love and hate video. And just like before, there's nothing much to say about this parking lot besides the fact that I parked the Clarity just as badly as I did in the last video. So yeah. So the first thing that I love about this Honda Clarity is the interior. And I've shown it in a few videos, but I'm gonna show it to you guys one more time. Look at this interior right here. This is a green exterior with a tan interior, which works really well with the car. But besides that, it's still leather with heated seats, and you got a nice wood center console right here. Along with that, you also have a nice center screen. Admittedly, it is a little bit outdated as the screen is literally just this little part right here. But still, Honda plays it off so nicely because of the fact that there are some buttons right here, as you're about to see. But even besides that, you have a nice digital gauge cluster that's very configurable right here with things such as your music, phone. I don't even know what this is. I would assume it's messages. Messages, yeah, I was right. General settings for the vehicle, switching it to kilometers, navigation, etc., etc. Things like that. Coming on into the back seat, this place is just as nice to sit. Admittedly, this little hump part does make the middle seat a bit of a pain to sit at. I have sat here before and I can confirm it is a little bit of a pain. Along with that, the headroom is a bit meh. I'm 5'7" and there's only a few inches between my head and the top of the roof when I'm sitting on the hump spot. Admittedly, when I'm sitting in an actual seat, there's actually quite a bit of room, but this hump is a little bit of a dislike. But besides that though, this back seat is so nice, especially compared to the Prius that we had before. There's a speaker here. There's two pockets here. This leather is nice to just rest your arm on. And over here, if I can pull out my phone in time, you can stuff your phone into this thing while it's charging off that cigarette lighter. I gotta say, this is probably one of the nicer back seats that I've sat in. Even compared to something like, say, a Tesla Model S. That was a $100,000 car starting off. This is a $40,000 car starting off. And I have to say, this thing is so much nicer to sit in than compared to the Tesla. This seat feels so much more form-fitting than the Tesla did, which I know, Tesla Nation, you're gonna come after me for that one. I'm sorry, that's my personal opinion. If it makes you feel any better, my BMW Z3 doesn't even have that type of seat, and that's supposed to be like a luxury sports car. This is just a plug-in hybrid, but still, like, this seat, it feels so nice. It feels like I'm being pushed into the seat, and that the leather on the sides here are just hugging me. I have not done a road trip where I need to sit in the back seat of the car yet, but I will say, when I have to do that, or if I have to do that, I'm gonna be so comfortable sitting in this seat. Oh my goodness. However, that being said, there is still something I really, really hate about this interior, and that is the plastic. The plastic here just feels cheap. It feels not that great. Admittedly, it is all black, so it's more hidden away because you get to focus in on this tan leather. But even in that case, it still just does not feel nice. It feels very cheaply put together, and it's shown signs of moving around. Like, a good example of the cheapness of the plastic is if you were to roll up the window on the driver's side of this Clarity, you can see the entire door panel move. I'll put a video of it right here. So yeah, the plastic really does mess with the vibe of the car. But besides that, you can still get enough attention away from it to focus in on the leather and the wood with how much there is. And quite frankly, I was not kidding, there is actually a lot of leather. I never thought about that. You can see it all throughout the center console there, not through the center console, through the center right there. The center console is covered in wood. There's a nice glossy material for the cup holders. The interior still puts itself very well together. It's just the plastic that kind of just throws it off a little bit. But it's still not enough plastic to completely make it a bad interior. So good on Honda for that. Now, I had mentioned earlier on that this is a $40,000 car starting. We did not pay $40,000 for this car. This car was $22,000. And this is one thing that I really love about the Clarity. and that's that these cars depreciated so much and so heavily. I think the big reason for that is because this car was only around for 3 model years, 2018 all the way to 2021, and then they killed the car, which is kind of sad because I really do like this car a lot more than a Civic or a Accord, because of the fact that, well, first of all, this front end, it just looks nice. But that's besides the point. Because it only lasted 3 years and they killed it off, this car depreciated so heavily. This is a $44,000 car with leather seats, Apple CarPlay, all the good tech from 2018, and this car was bought for only $22,000. Over 50% depreciation in 3 years, which for any other car is normal, but for a Honda, that's actually crazy to think about. If you tried to go and buy a Civic from 2018, they would probably be about the same as the MSRP of that Civic when it was sold in 2018. This car dropped $22,000 in value in 3 years, which is crazy to think about. But on the used market, it is awesome to have because this is a Honda quality car that is still fairly fun, and it gets really, really good fuel economy. And speaking of the fuel economy, one of the things that I really do like about this Clarity is the fuel economy. I was just driving this car on a 3-hour road trip, and I managed to get over 54 miles per gallon. I'll show a photo of it here. But for a 3-hour trip where I was on state highways, which if you know anything about hybrids, you know that they don't perform well on state highways, I still managed to get that much fuel economy out of this thing. You can't lie, that's quite impressive actually. And if anyone's curious on how I was able to do that, I basically, when I was in the city, I would put the car in full EV mode, and then once I reached highways and things like that, then I would put the car in hybrid mode while keeping the eco mode on. So essentially what that would do is it would put hybrid power and it would still keep it at like low RPMs, things like that. The reason I think that 54 miles per gallon, by the way, is crazy is because of the fact that when we had our Prius, the most I could probably do on a 3-hour road trip is like 45 miles per gallon. So to get an almost 10 mile per gallon difference out of this is crazy to believe, because everyone considers the Prius to be the end-all be-all hybrid car. Everyone loves the Prius. Everyone thinks that it's going to get the best fuel economy out of any car. And I just beat what I would get in a Prius with this thing. However, that being said, that does bring me to one thing that I really don't like about this Clarity, and that is the range. And what I mean by that is, well, actually, we have to go inside to talk about that, so let's go. So if we come on into the Clarity right now, we start up the car, all that jazz. Ignore the service past due light, we're working on that. But besides that, and ignore those, we have a range meter right here. And what this range shows is obviously how much range we have until the car runs out of fuel. And so we have up here 36 miles of pure EV range, 314 miles of HV range, which is basically the gas range. The problem with that is that obviously this range will adapt to my driving habits, but that being said, it can really change the range very heavily. One example of this is back in December. This was actually the night that I got pulled over. When I started my trip, I had about 200 and something miles of range left, and I was driving about 100 miles. So I was like, okay, I'll end up with about half a tank left. Nope. My range had dropped so much to the point where I probably would have not made it had I hadn't stopped for gas. In other words, the range dropped by 200 miles almost and halved itself basically. I do have to say, the adaptive range thing does get kind of a pain, but I mean, hey, what am I gonna do? And on that note, and now speaking of the fuel, oh wait, I actually used that. Sorry. And now speaking of the EV range, we can now talk about one of the things I really liked about this Clarity when I was driving it around, and that was the fact that I got free fuel driving this Clarity. And you might be wondering, how did I manage to do that? And that's because my parking garage provides free electric vehicle charging. Obviously, this is not a fully electric vehicle, but it's a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. And quite frankly, it still did the job, and it would charge the Clarity, and someone's dog is barking. Thanks, dog. But back to the Clarity. This car would be able to be charged for free, and in the city, I was able to just drive it around on the pure electric and rarely ever use any gas whatsoever. Along with that, this car would get about 40 miles of pure EV range, which was quite impressive for a plug-in hybrid. In fact, it was so impressive that from the beginning of January all the way to the beginning of March, I only used about 5 gallons of gas in total. I rarely ever use the gas motor in town, and so as a result, the only time that I was using gas was to road trip this car. And as we just heard, I got 54 miles a gallon. And so 2 trips, about 200 and something miles, 5 gallons, awesome. Now you might be thinking, 2 months, 1 tank of gas? You must have like a giant fuel tank in this car. And the thing is, no, this car actually has quite a small fuel tank, which is one of the things I really dislike about the Clarity. It only has a 7-gallon fuel tank. That's right, you heard me, 7 gallons of gas. Even though it is a hybrid that gets 50 miles a gallon, it can still be a pain sometimes. Every so often we'll do a road trip with about 350 miles, and so it gives severe, I guess, like range anxiety, you could call it, when we're approaching the fact that the gas tank's about to run out, and so is the EV range. And so we have to basically stop in the middle of this trip to go fill up the Clarity with gas. Compared to our Prius, we were able to just do that trip in 1 tank of gas, no problems whatsoever. While I do appreciate this car and really do like this car, the fact that it has a 7-gallon fuel tank, only about 40 miles of range, does make it a pain in the butt sometimes. And it does give an argument for a lot of people who either say go full hybrid or go full electric, because of the fact that this thing has lower electric range along with a small gas tank. And so it does kind of bring out the worst in both worlds. And the final thing that I don't like about this Clarity is the new technology. And you might think, oh, it's new technology, that's great. But the thing is that the first years of new technology are always a pain to have sometimes. And this is a 2018 model. So this was the first year that they introduced a lot of this technology, and it doesn't work properly sometimes. One example of this is on the recent road trip that I mentioned where I got 54 miles a gallon. It was raining that day, and I was trying to use the lane keep assist on it. And it would go in and out so much, and so every so often it'll be like, okay, the car is keeping its own lane, and then the lane keep will not detect the lanes, and then it'll shut off. And you don't realize it at first, and you're like, wait, why am I drifting towards this one side of the lane? And you have to correct it, and then it'll recalibrate and come back on. It can always be a bit of a pain when it does that, and quite frankly, it does annoy me, so I just don't really use it that much. Along with that, the adaptive cruise control, it's actually a fairly good adaptive cruise control, but it can also be a little bit of a pain sometimes, because sometimes it won't go the speed that you want it to, even if it's the speed limit. So ever since the whole speeding fiasco, I've been using the adaptive cruise control on road trips to keep the exact speed limit. And even in that case, sometimes it'll do 1 or 2 miles over the limit, sometimes it'll do 1 or 2 miles under the limit. And so I gotta turn it off, turn it back on, and that's a whole thing. Along with that, this car does feature an electronic handbrake, which for me personally, I don't know if you guys can see it there, by the way, it is right there, yeah. But I don't know about you guys, I don't like electronic handbrakes. I like to have a physical handbrake that you can just pull up, just like in my Z3. But besides that, I do gotta say, this car, it's still fairly nice, and it does everything that I wanted to, and so I gotta give it some love for that. And on that note, this video is over. I hope you guys did enjoy it. If you did, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike. Let me know how you feel about the Clarity in the comments below. Is there anything you guys like about this car or anything you dislike about this car? Let me know in the comments below for that. And if you like what you're seeing, leave a subscribe. And just like that, I'm out. Stay tuned for next week's video where an old friend of ours makes a return. Peace.